The secure weapons lab was supposed to be empty. So when Commander Thorne saw a woman in civilian clothes expertly calibrating a top-secret Barrett .50 cal, every instinct screamed intruder. Her first 2 words changed everything. I know. The low, sterile hum of the climate control systems was the only sound that should have been present in the Naval Special Warfare Advanced Weapons Center. It was 0200 hours, a time when the gleaming white epoxy floors of the Coronado facility were usually deserted, reflecting only the cool, blue glow of diagnostic displays. Commander Alex Riptide. Thorne's boots made no sound as he moved down the corridor, his late-night patrol a ritual born from 15 years of hard-won experience. That experience was now screaming at him. Through the reinforced ballistic glass of Lab Delta 7, a silhouette moved with impossible grace. A woman. She stood at a calibration table reserved for the most sensitive assets in their arsenal, her form stark against the holographic schematics flickering on the wall behind her. She wore a simple white silk blouse and tailored black slacks, attire more suited for a corporate boardroom than SCF. Her silver blonde hair was pulled back in a severe, precise bun, not a single strand out of place. In her hands, she cradled the receiver of an M107A1 Barrett .50 caliber sniper system with a familiarity that sent a jolt of ice through Thorne's veins. He didn't hesitate. With a flick of his wrist on a nearby console, the lab's magnetic locks engaged with a heavy thud, sealing the room. He entered through the now-locked door, the hiss of the pressure seal breaking the silence. The woman didn't flinch, her focus absolute as she used a micrometer to adjust the trigger group. Her movements were fluid, economical, a dance of deadly precision. Ma'am, Thorne's voice was a low growl, honed to command SEALs in the heat of battle. You are in restricted area. Step away from that weapon system. Now. She didn't look up. Her ice blue eyes remained fixed on her work, her hands moving with the unhurried confidence of a master craftsman. She continued to polish a component with a soft cloth, her touch almost reverent. I know, she replied, her voice quiet but clear, cutting through the sterile air. The casual, 2-word admission was more jarring than any alarm. It wasn't a confession, it was a dismissal of his authority, a statement that the rules he lived and died by simply did not apply to her. The confrontation had begun. Thorne's jaw tightened. In his world, defiance in a place like this was unthinkable. It was a prelude to violence. He took a step closer, his hand instinctively moving toward the sidearm holstered at his hip. I'm not going to ask again. Identify yourself and explain how you bypassed 3 layers of biometric security. I walked in, she said, her tone conversational, as if discussing the morning fog over the bay. She picked up a specialized torque wrench, applying a precise amount of pressure to a scope mount. And the security system didn't register me because for all official purposes I don't exist. The sheer audacity of her statement left Thorne momentarily speechless. He felt the ground of protocol and procedure shifting beneath his feet. Everyone exists to someone, ma'am. And right now, you exist to me. That weapon is a Tier 1 asset. Handling it requires top-secret clearance with SCI caveats. Sensitive compartmented information, she interrupted, still not looking at him. Yes, I'm familiar with the classification levels. Are you familiar with the maintenance schedule for this specific rifle, Commander Thorne? The use of his name hit him like a physical blow. He hadn't introduced himself. His presence at this specific facility was on a need-to-know basis. What do you know my name? The same way I know you've been filing reports for the last 8 months about this rifle's declining performance metrics, she continued, her voice a placid stream of classified data. You've noted concerns about barrel harmonics fluctuating in extreme temperatures, a fact that was buried in an annex of a report only you and Admiral Kensington have accessed. Every word was a perfectly aimed shot at his composure. She was right. He had been deeply concerned about that specific Barrett, designated Cerberus by his team. The information was so sensitive it was firewalled even from most of the weapons maintenance staff. He felt a cold dread creep up his spine. This wasn't an intruder. This was something else entirely. This was a ghost who knew the secrets of his house better than he did. Who are you? he demanded, his voice losing its hard edge, now laced with a mixture of awe and fear. She finally paused her work, setting a component down with surgical precision. I'm the person who knows this rifle needs to be perfectly zeroed in the next 4 hours. And you, Commander, are the one who needs to decide whether to follow your protocol or your instincts. The power dynamic in a room had not just shifted, it had been completely inverted. Thorne stared at her, his mind racing, trying to process the impossible situation. Every alarm bell in his head was blaring, yet his training was at war with what his gut was telling him. This woman projected a level of calm competence that he'd only seen in the most elite, battle-hardened operators. She wasn't a threat in the conventional sense. She was an anomaly, a living breach of reality itself. "You haven't answered my question," he said, his voice now more inquisitive than commanding. She finally turned her head, and for the first time, her ice-blue eyes met his. They were unsettlingly clear, holding a depth of experience that seemed ancient. "Accessing the terminal to your left will answer more questions than I can," she said calmly. "You'll need to override the standard interface. Initiate Project Ghostfire." The name meant nothing to him. It sounded like something out of spy novel, not an official military project designation. "I don't have clearance for a project with that name." "You don't," she agreed, "but the system will grant you provisional access. The password is personal." She paused, her gaze unwavering. "The name of the stray dog you rescued in Kandahar, followed by the grid coordinates of your first solo command." Thorne felt the air leave his lungs. It was as if she had reached into his soul and pulled out his most guarded memories. Bandit, the scruffy mutt that had kept him sane during his first brutal tour. The classified coordinates in the Helmand province where he'd earned his command pin. These weren't facts stored on a server. They were pieces of his identity. No foreign intelligence agency could know that. Stumbling over to the terminal, moving as if in a trance, he typed in the override command. The screen flickered, displaying a single, stark password field under a blacked-out insignia he'd never seen before. His fingers trembled slightly as he typed. Bandit 34.5585 and 69.1575E. The system accepted it. A single file appeared on the screen, its title simple and chilling. Operator_service_file. He clicked it open. Most of the file was redacted, black lines obscuring names, dates, and locations. But one section was left brutally clear. Weapon system, Barrett M107A1, Cerberus. Confirmed engagements, 73. Operator status, active, ghost protocol. Maximum validated engagement range, 3,247 meters. Thorne read the number again, and again, 3,247 meters. Over 2 miles. It wasn't just a record. It was a statistical impossibility. The longest confirmed sniper kill in history was a miracle of physics and luck. This file suggested it was a repeatable, validated skill. His blood ran cold. The woman working on the rifle wasn't just an operator. She was a living legend, a myth made flesh, whose very existence was the highest level of national secret. The world tilted on its axis. Thorne leaned against the terminal for support. The glowing number, 3,247, seared into his mind. He looked from the screen to the woman, who had resumed her meticulous work as if she hadn't just shattered his understanding of modern warfare. He was no longer a commander confronting an intruder. He was a novice in the presence of a master. "Ow!" The word came out as a hoarse whisper. No one makes consistent shots at that range. The variables, Coriolis effect, spin drift, atmospheric pressure gradients, muzzle velocity of 853 meters per second, a 750 grain Hornady AMAX projectile, and a flight time of approximately 7.8 seconds, she recited, her voice as steady as a metronome. At 3,247 meters, the bullet drop is roughly 148 meters. Wind drift is the real challenge. You need real-time data from multiple points along the flight path. You don't just shoot at the target. You shoot at a point in space where the target will be when the bullet arrives. She spoke of ballistic calculations that would require a supercomputer with the casual ease of someone reciting a recipe. The chasm between his expertise and hers was terrifyingly vast. He finally understood. She wasn't just a sniper. She was a human ballistic solution. "Who are you?" he asked again, but this time the question was different. It was no longer a demand for a name, but a plea for understanding. "Today, my name is Alara Vance," she said, finally setting down her tools and turning to face him fully. "I'm a civilian contractor specializing in precision equipment maintenance, which is exactly what I'm doing." She held up a freshly cleaned bolt carrier group, its surface gleaming under the lab lights. "And tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," she continued, her ice blue eyes holding his, "I will be whoever needs to be behind this rifle when a shot has to be taken that no one else can make." The cryptic answer was all he would get, and he knew it. He was facing a choice that would define his career. He could follow protocol, trigger an incident that would spiral into a storm of investigations, and end his command. Or he could trust the impossible truth standing before him. His instincts, honed by years of life-or-death decisions, were screaming at him to trust the ghost. "This operation, the one that isn't happening," Thorne said, his voice regaining some of its strength. "What kind of threat are we facing?" Alara's expression hardened slightly. "The kind where a failure to engage means American lives are lost, and a diplomatic crisis ignites a regional war. The kind where missing the shot is not an option." He felt a familiar chill, the cold dread that preceded a high-risk mission. He was no longer an outsider to her world. She had just pulled him into its orbit. "What do you need from me?" he asked, the words sealing his decision. He was in. A flicker of something, perhaps surprise, perhaps respect, crossed Alara's face before being replaced by her usual stoic calm. "I need your discretion, Commander. And for the next 2 hours, I need this lab to remain off-limits to everyone, including you." Thorne nodded. "Consider it done." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Alara, that 3,247-meter shot. Was it necessary?" She paused in her reassembly, holding a component up to the light, examining it for microscopic flaws. The target was a high-value individual in a moving vehicle, surrounded by civilian non-combatants, through variable crosswinds at high altitude. It was the only solution that prevented a catastrophic loss of innocent life. Her gaze met his in the reflection of the polished metal. "Necessity defines my work, Commander. It's all that defines it." Thorne left her to her ritual. He spent the next 2 hours pacing his office, the contents of her service file burning in his memory. He was guarding a secret that felt heavier than any command he had ever held. When he returned, the lab was just as he had left it, except the Barrett M107A1 was fully reassembled, resting on its bipod like a sleeping predator. It looked identical to how it had before, but Thorne knew it was fundamentally different. It had been tuned by its master, its mechanical soul perfectly aligned for an impossible task. Alara was meticulously packing specialized ammunition into a case, her hands moving with a surgeon's precision. As she worked, Thorne noticed the subtle details he had missed before. The faint, silvery scars on her knuckles, the slight flattening of her right index finger's callus, the unmistakable marks of a life spent in the service of the trigger. These were the hands of a true operator, someone whose entire existence was a testament to preparation and perfection. "Can I ask you something personal?" Thorne ventured. "You can ask. The psychological cost of what you do. How do you manage it?" Alara stilled, her hands hovering over the rifle stock. For a fleeting second, Thorne saw a crack in her professional armor, a glimpse of the woman beneath the weapon. "Every time I look through the scope, I carry the weight of it," she said softly, her voice barely a whisper. "But questioning the cost doesn't change the necessity. Someone has to stand on that wall. Someone has to take the shot." The cold finality of her words hung in the air. She was a weapon as finely calibrated and as deadly as the rifle she now placed into its custom-fit carrying case. The entire system weighed over 30 pounds, but she shouldered it with an ease that belied its bulk. It was a part of her. "Will you be safe?" he asked, the question feeling inadequate as soon as he said it. "Safety is a luxury my profession doesn't afford," she replied, turning to face him. "But the mission will be completed." She extended a hand. He shook it, feeling the firm, steady grip that conveyed absolute confidence under unimaginable pressure. "Alara Vance," he said, "it's been a privilege." "The privilege was mine, Commander Thorne," she replied. "And Alex, make sure the logs are clean." With a final, almost imperceptible nod, Alara Vance turned and walked out of the lab. The magnetic locks disengaged before she reached the door, as she disappeared into the corridor as silently as she had appeared, leaving Thorne alone with the ghost of her presence. He stood for a long moment, the sterile hum of the lab the only sound. Then, he moved to the terminal and initiated the security protocol that would erase all records of his access, wiping Project Ghostfire and the name Alara Vance from the system's short-term memory. The ghost had returned to the shadows. 36 hours later, international news networks exploded with reports of a foiled terrorist attack on a U.S. diplomatic convoy in a volatile, unnamed region. A high-value terrorist leader, known for his brutal tactics and elusiveness, had been eliminated. The official reports were vague, crediting a coalition special operations force with the success. They mentioned a single, precise shot fired from an impossible distance under adverse weather conditions, but provided no further details. Thorne watched the coverage from his office, a grim sense of understanding settling over him. He knew the truth. It wasn't a coalition force. It was one woman with a rifle she treated like a sacred instrument, making a shot that defied the laws of physics to save lives that would never know her name. In the official maintenance log for Lab Delta 7, the entry for that night was mundane. Routine service on Asset 23847 performed by authorized personnel. No names, no details, no trace of the conversation that had fundamentally altered his perception of the invisible war being fought in the defense of his country. Alara Vance, or whatever her real name was, would never receive a medal. Her story would never be told. She would simply join the ranks of the whispers and legends shared between operators in hushed tones. The story of the ghost sniper, who could make impossible shots, who appeared when needed and vanished like smoke. And somewhere in a secure, undisclosed location, a Barrett .50 caliber rifle would be waiting, maintained to perfection, ready for the next time a problem needed to be solved from very, very far away. Because some heroes are never meant to be known. What are your thoughts on these unseen guardians? Share your ideas respectfully in the comments below. And if you were captivated by this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Always comment with respect.